Hey, it's J. T. Also known as JT the LA Storyteller. Here are los cuentos de Los Angeles. Also known as JT the LA Storyteller Podcast. Hey, what is going on, Los Angeles? It's J. T. and I hope that you are very well. Today is June 21st, 2024, and that means yours truly is back with another Los Cuentos recap. Basically, taking a look this time at the LAUSD elections, which took place this March 5th, 2024, or which took place during the 2024 primary elections. And we're looking at LAUSD for a few different reasons. We're looking at LAUSD this afternoon or evening or whenever it is that you're tuning into this installment of JT the LA Storyteller podcast, because LAUSD is not just an institution that concerns at least 600,000 families in the county of Los Angeles, but it's also the second largest employer in all of LA County after LA County government itself. That's right. At 90,000 employees, including teachers, including cafeteria workers, including nurses, counselors, including janitors, and so many more, these folks make up a huge part of what LA is, what LA has been, and what LA may yet still be. And so naturally, or by extension, this also means that LAUSD is a lot of money in flow out there. To be more specific, LAUSD is an approximately $18 billion institution in the city of Los Angeles. That's right, just between 2023 and 2024 for those approximately 600,000 families. And so the image in front of us is an image of none other than Superintendent Carvalho alongside LA Mayor Karen Bass. And Superintendent Carvalho is, well, basically the chief administrator of the LAUSD budget more than anything else. He drafts and proposes budgets, and in cases of emergency, he is also responsible for, well, fast-tracking decision making and getting boots on the ground if and when necessary. There was a huge cyber attack on LAUSD over the past couple of years that he and his team were also supposed to be overseeing and addressing in particular. And so Carvalho is the chief admin. He's not voted in, or I should say that the superintendent is not voted in by the general electorate or by voters such as myself, but he is basically interviewed for and essentially decided upon by the LA Board of Education. And so that's who we're talking about this afternoon or evening or whenever it is that you're listening to this installment of JT the LA Storyteller podcast. We're talking about Board of Education seats 1, 3, 5, and 7. These are the 4 that were up for election over this past March 5th, 2024, and, well, there are updates to account for, hence this recap. So why don't we go ahead and get started to basically let the city know as to where we're headed when it comes to these districts. 4 of 7 districts which make up the Los Angeles Board of Education in 2024. And so just before we get started, I do want to make a note, which is that education in the second largest city in the United States is an incredibly difficult undertaking. Certainly if you're an educator on the front lines, but also as a custodial worker or as a cafeteria worker or as a dean and even as an administrator and certainly as a board district representative. So in looking at LAUSD for a moment, we should note that, like, by all means, I mean nothing but respect for them and for the families whom they are elected to serve. So, that said, let's let the city know and begin with LAUSD District 1, the race in LAUSD District 1. And this is an interesting scenario because we have Sherlett Hendy-Newbill up front in first place, as well as Khallid Al-Alhim. And if you have listened to previous installments of JT the LA Storyteller podcast, or if you've just kept up with the way the elections work on this Southern California side of things, then you know that in the primaries, for any candidate who doesn't get over 50%, but who nevertheless lands first, what it means is that they'll be going head to head with the second place candidate. And so in this case, as you can see on the graph here, or the histograms, I forgot that histogramming is a word, or that histogram is a term, but what you can see through the histogram, or these bars in front of us, is that Sherlett and Khallid are basically first and second place, or got first and second place for this Board of Education seat. And so they'll be seeing each other in November. But the interesting caveat for this election or race or competition in particular is that, well, there have been a few events since the election, especially concerning Khallid Al-Alhim. And specifically, what has happened ever since Al-Alhim announced his campaign is that, well, there's been a lot of news as to his social media activity in particular, and his kind of propensity to support figures such as, say, Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam, who has been known to express anti-Semitic views on previous occasions, and who has been known to espouse anti-Semitic ideology in one form or another. And so this was kind of a tough couple of months for Al-Alhim, because prior to this, he'd been known mostly as a community organizer within LAUSD, someone who spent a lot of time on the ground with students and families. But over the last couple of years, his social media activity has really come under the spotlight. I mean, that's going to happen when you're running for a seat as public as LAUSD District 1. And so this has actually been not just a news item, but it's actually led none other than UTLA, or the United Teachers of Los Angeles, or the Teachers Union in LA, to rescind or retract or take back their support for Al-Alhim. So they initially started out supporting his candidacy. They initially started out believing in his ability to support teachers and communities and to stand up against charter schools, which we're not going to get into very specifically here. You can kind of research the tension between charter and, say, traditional public schools via the show notes on your own time. But ever since all this social media activity of Al-Alhim's has come into light, UTLA has rescinded their support. And so I think it's going to be very difficult for Al-Alhim to kind of regroup and, say, regain UTLA's support. That's kind of not going to happen. And regain the overall community support, because UTLA is connected to a whole lot of different community members out in Los Angeles. It's a very powerful union in the city, if not one of the most powerful unions in the city. And so I really think that Sherlett Hendy-Newbill is going to take this all the way. Shirley Hendy-Newbill is a parent herself to two young boys who are also at LAUSD. She is probably friendlier to charter schools and the charter school movement in Los Angeles. And so it'll be interesting to see how that relationship plays out. But yeah, since it's this top two primary system, going into November, Newbill is going to have just a single opponent, right? That opponent will be Al-Alhim. Al-Alhim has essentially been stripped of a lot of his credibility over his social media activity, and so Sherlett Hendy-Newbill is not going to have a difficult race from here on out, with about 110 days before October 7th or before ballots arrive to mailboxes in LA. So I really see her coming away with this, and I hope that communities in District 1, which include the Crenshaw Corridor, Hyde Park, West Athens, or the Deep Hundreds in South Los Angeles, which include parts of the greater Wilshire area, the sort of mid-city neighborhood, and more. I hope that folks in these communities can reach out to Sherlett Hendy-Newbill in the days ahead and spark up that dialogue and see what her stance is on the issues, so that we may hold her accountable once she gets through. But that's a little bit of the recap for Board of Education seat District 1. Okay, let's move on to District 3. Yeah. And before I forget, there's a map of Board of Education District 1. As you can see, we have a number of different, say, communities all throughout this side of Los Angeles, especially communities going farther west as well as going south. So a lot of the southwest side when it comes to this district seat. And yeah, for your reference as well, these are 7 seats, or there are 7 seats which make up the Board of Education. So each of those chunks manages somewhere in the range of $2.7 billion or something to that effect. And so each district maintains serious economic weight in terms of those jobs, in terms of those contracts, in terms of the tech which gets into the school, and policy. And yeah, we'll say more in our overall summary. But before then, let's move on to District 3, because it's about that time. Board of Education District 3 actually concerns more of that northwest side. And I'll pull up the map in just a moment, but for your reference, right now, the top 2 vote getters, we're going to say, are Scott Mark Schmerelson as well as Dan Chang. And Scott Schmerelson is an ally of the Los Angeles Teachers Union, also known as UTLA, has been at this seat for the past 8 years or so. This would be his 3rd and final term on there, and he was just on the cusp of getting to it without a worry in the world until Dan Chang came along and grabbed just enough of the vote to place them in a top 2 competition come November, less than 110 days out, roughly speaking. And Dan Chang is also an educator, has been an educator for the past 20 years, according to his website, has taught at a traditional public school with LAUSD for the past 6 years, I believe it is, and Chang is a math or algebra teacher, to be even more specific about it. And so Chang has really come into this race engaging with communities on the language of newness and something refreshing for the district, and something more empowering and less bureaucratic for the district, right? And this is because Chang, as a sort of outsider, someone who has not worked on the administrative level previously, is certainly rife with ideas about how to improve the district and how to cut the red tape and how to reflect a less bureaucratic institution, as it is currently the case under Schmerelson and a lot of, well, the way that the LAUSD Board of Ed does business generally. And so Chang is really engaging with communities on that level. He is also the founder of at least one charter-backed or charter-backing organization based on info that I saw on his site. And he's therefore definitely going to be friendlier to the charter school movement, which is of concern for UTLA, and which, of course, is basically going to define this race yet again as another one that comes down to whether one is for or against charter schools in the district. But Chang has found a way to maneuver past just that framing of things to note that, like, hey, his goal is neither pro traditional public school nor pro charter school, but his goal is something that works for students whether they are at either, so long as they are in K through 12 in Los Angeles, that is at the public school level. And so I hope that communities on this side can invite both Scott as well as Dan to a dialogue on the issues so that they can say more themselves. And so these are communities in Chatsworth, communities in Northridge, communities in Van Nuys, and even North Hollywood, actually. And they are also communities in Granada Hills. This is a lot of that Northwest Valley side. And so, yeah, invite them. Get out and speak with these candidates and hear what they have to say when it comes to the main issues facing these communities. LAUSD as an institution tends to be underreported on, but it ends up getting a whole lot of expenditures allotted to it, especially by outsiders. The last I recalled, Reed Hastings of Netflix was a huge investor in the pro-charter school movement. I wonder why. I wonder what he had at stake. And though the candidate he was backing at the time was ultimately defeated, hey, like, there's always another fresh figure to support when it comes to doing the private sector's bidding at the public school level here, right? So there's a lot of money that is moving in either direction, one should say. And I am certainly interested in how this race will unfold going into November. I hope that the local neighborhood councils in District 3 can really pull these candidates into the conversation, and we will take it from there. We will certainly stay vigilant and stay tuned from there. But for now, that is District 3 for you on that northwest side of Los Angeles, the San Fernando Valley side in particular. Okay, moving on from Council District. Oh, look at yours truly. Moving on from Board of Education District 3, we have Board of Education District 5. And this is a race now between Karla Griego and Graciela Grace Ortiz. And so this is the one race of the 7 that is embroiled in serious controversy. And that is because Graciela Grace Ortiz, who is actually also the former mayor of the city of Huntington Park in that southeast Los Angeles side of our great county, Graciela Grace Ortiz has actually been dismissed most recently from her post as a counselor at none other than Huntington Park High School because of her involvement in a lawsuit. And not just any kind of lawsuit, but a lawsuit concerning abuse by one of her or her colleagues, her close colleagues, volunteers, and a student volunteer for either her or her colleagues' campaign. And so, yeah, it's a very serious case, and it's a very damaging case, and it's a very concerning case, especially given the fact that Graciela Grace Ortiz, as the former mayor of Huntington Park, should really know better about putting together a team and about choosing the right people and about safeguarding what the work environment, quote, work environment, unquote, looks like between her volunteers and her or her colleagues, staff members. And so, yeah, this has not made huge news out there if you sort of don't live in District 5, which concerns quite a bit of that Northeast LA side, as well as parts of the central side, including K-Town, including, say, a little bit of the city going up to that southeast Los Angeles side. Let me expand my map here for a second, and then we shall say more. But yeah, these are the facts on the ground when it comes to LAUSD District 5 at the moment, right? So here's a little bit of it for your eyes. This district includes Eagle Rock. It includes the Elysian Heights or Elysian Valley area. It includes parts of East Hollywood, where yours truly resides. And it certainly includes the beautiful RFK schools smack dab in Koreatown. It goes down into the West Adams district and even further south and a little bit going east into just before that Vernon side. Yeah, just before the official Vernon city side. And so it's a hugely Latinx district, and both, say, Karla Griego or someone named Karla Griego or someone named Graciela Grace Ortiz is going to stand to do well, but we should make that note about the latter in particular, especially because as a former mayor of Huntington Park, she should probably know better, and she should at the very least be doing her utmost to clear her name in this because, hey, why shouldn't voters be extremely concerned about her involvement to one extent or another in a case of abuse concerning someone that she or her close colleague has contracted or made a part of their team? The other note I want to make is that this is kind of an example of what happens when a handful of people in a small city such as Huntington Park, let's say, get to know what the political landscape of that city tends to be. And this is what happens when, you know what, this term is up and it's time to move on to better things. And lo and behold, because we've got all this experience and all this data at hand, why don't we just keep climbing up the political ladder out there? And that really irks me personally, because politics, if they're just a career to you, and politics, if they're just about your personal gain, then guess what? In the city of Los Angeles, we are very much through with that. We are very much over it, and we are very much looking to get past that in order to elect real representatives who are actually there on behalf of the people they're elected to serve. And it is up to you all to make of it what you will. But for me, climbing up the political ladder, when that is your sole goal here, is an absolute offense or insult to the communities you claim to serve. Because, as noted, there are at least $2.7 billion on the line or something to this effect in Board of Education District 5. And there are some maybe 200,000 families that are of note when it comes to this district. And there are not just these young people, but these college careers and these nurses and these teachers and these counselors and cafeteria workers who are all supposed to be represented in one way, shape, or form by a Board of Education member. And so it cannot be just another stop on your tour up the political ladder. So if Graciela Grace Ortiz or any of her supporters take issue with that note, by all means get in touch, and I'm happy to speak with either Graciela or Karla Griego on the issue that much further. To be certain, Karla Griego is actually a teacher or an educator at none other than the Sotomayor Magnet Schools out in Cypress Park. Shout out Cypress Park. Cypress Park is amazing. And she's actually in the special education department there and has been a part of that community for the last 2 decades. Karla Griego is also a first-time aspiring office holder. And so I do think that she has quite a case to make to voters out there when it comes to who they should be electing for Board of Education District 5 in the months ahead. I'm excited about learning about Karla Griego's campaign that much more. I hope that she can get out to the district as much as possible. This district has also been overseen by none other than Jackie Goldberg, a huge political name in the city of Los Angeles over the last few decades, someone who's served not just on the LAUSD board, but also at the LA City Council board. Jackie Goldberg is a legend, a living legend at that, but she's over it and she's ready to move on with the rest of her life. And so I think that a true educator such as Karla Griego has a lot to build on. Not just big shoes to fill, I'll say, but a lot to build on, a lot that she can certainly develop as a member of this community. And so I very much invite her onto JT, the LA Storyteller podcast, to tell us about what she looks to do for these communities at that Board of Education. All right, that's District 5 for you. Let's get into District 7, the last but not least. Okay, and so in this case, Board of Education District 7 is actually special in that if you take a closer look at that percentage point, you'll see that the seat has been won outright. And the winner for this seat is the incumbent, Tanya Ortiz Franklin, who will now serve as the district representative until at least 2028 when the seat is up for election again. So this concerns the South Bay portion of Los Angeles. And I've got the map for us here. Let's try and expand it for your reference. And so, yeah, it's another huge part of the city of Los Angeles, which we are just getting to explore in all honesty. And that's because, well, the South Bay really represents these communities heading out to the port of Los Angeles. And they are therefore special in that way. They are communities in the cities of San Pedro, the city of Carson, the city of Gardena, the city of Wilmington, and a lot more of the city as it heads into that south side. So nothing but respect and love to the South Bay. In particular, what I understand as a huge and ongoing issue or challenge for especially Black and Brown communities on this side of Los Angeles is the port and its pollutants, all of the cargo and all of the trade and all of the greenhouse gas emissions, not only from that port side, but also from the ongoing existence and use of oil fields, especially right up against communities like those of Wilmington. These have huge adverse effects, and effects that we have studied and documented well enough up to this point to sound the alarm bells and to not just ask for, but to demand for something more equitable. And so I do think that conversations with Tanya Ortiz Franklin in this respect are highly merited or justified. And I look forward to hearing her speak on these issues and how it is that LAUSD District 7 is responding. I think there's also a lot to be said about just what education in the South Bay should look like when it comes to its unique role, given its unique geography, given its unique economic weight and importance, not just to Los Angeles County, but to the United States. I mean, there are so many shipments that come in through the LA and Long Beach port, which then head out to the rest of the United States. And so we need to think about how our young people are going to be involved in that, and whether our young people are going to be able to afford to hang on to their living and to actually improve their living conditions on this side of Los Angeles, given these and other challenges, such as, say, the upcoming 2028 Olympics and all that the 2028 Olympics are doing to shift the landscape, literally shift the landscape of Los Angeles in the buildup, in the lead up. So that is LAUSD District 7 for you. And yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to continue in convo about LAUSD, this second largest employer in all of LA County. And when it comes to this huge institution that binds so many of us who come up out here in the city of Los Angeles, there's a lot to discuss. Even as we speak, though school is out, there's a summer meal program that the district is facilitating for families out there so that students can pick up their meals. This was kind of a huge deal during COVID in particular when Austin Butner initiated the program, and it should be interesting to see how the program fares this summer and how many families participate, and just how we can trace that data to see what the meal program is accomplishing and what it just may be missing. It was also the case, speaking of Austin Butner, that in 2021, or just about that time, LAUSD, through his administration, announced plans to build housing on LAUSD property. Because if you don't know, you should know from here on out that LAUSD is not only the second largest employer in the county of Los Angeles, but that it's also one of the largest landowners in the region, owning more than 6,400 acres throughout the greater Los Angeles County area. And so that's a whole lot of land. And in a city as crunched for housing as ours is, this can be a major role player in addressing the housing needs here. I've also heard from teachers noting that most of their paycheck actually just goes to paying rent so that they can continue as they also facilitate the day-to-day work of educating the next generation or our students and families out there. And I have also heard of incredibly long and incredibly difficult commutes into the city of Los Angeles, especially by these educators who have already sacrificed so much of their time and so much of their energy to serve our city. And so LAUSD's ongoing investment into actually building housing and actually facilitating a conversation with the city as to how to house more of the communities who need it, especially at our schools, by all means, that's a conversation that I am very much there for and very much staying vigilant and staying tuned for. And with that said, that has been the 2024 primary elections recap for LAUSD. Up next are the LA County Board seats as well as the District Attorney's race, and we should also make a note about the Superior Court Judge seats. So let's definitely get into that in our next recap, but for now, until the very next time, you already know, stay vigilant and stay tuned. It's J.T. out with more soon. Hey, it's J.T. Also known as JT the LA Storyteller. Here are Los Cuentos de Los Angeles. Also known as JT the LA Storyteller Podcast.